The Knowledgeable Provider podcast is educational, entertaining, and not the same as medical training. The information presented here should not be used by anyone to diagnose or treat any medical condition in themselves or others. If you need medical advice, go see your own knowledgeable medical provider. Opinions expressed on the podcast are solely those of the people expressing them and are not necessarily representative of any other entities. Other than lunches at the office, I do not receive any sort of compensation from pharmaceutical or medical device companies, and I have no other relevant financial disclosures. It's all fun and games until someone gets sued, am I right? Okay, on with the show. Dale Hutchens, welcome to Knowledgeable Provider. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while.
I have been looking forward to it as well.
Before we get into it, you want to just introduce yourself?
Okay. I'm retired. When I wasn't retired, I was a polymer chemist, and I worked for a couple of different companies doing research for elastomers, mostly elastomers, some plastics. Educationally, I have a doctorate in polymer science from the University of Southern Mississippi.
Oh, pardon me. Dr. Dale Hutchens, welcome to Knowledgeable Provider. That's important. Didn't know that.
One of my side gigs, one of my side hustles. I've taught a polymer science class and a little other chemistry at Athens State since the late 80s.
Wow.
And first night I tell my students, I'm Dale. I don't want you using any title just because I didn't have sense enough to leave graduate school sooner.
Sure.
So I'm Dale.
Dale's wife, Cindy, was a previous guest on the podcast. She talked with us about her situation with lupus. That's a very interesting episode, if you haven't heard that one. Dale's got a pretty interesting story of his own to tell. I've been excited about hearing it. And by the way, most prepared guest ever. Normally, I'm writing the questions. Dale, months ago, was like, here's what we're going to talk about. all I had to do for this was show up and push play. So appreciate that. And Dale's been a very enthusiastic supporter of this podcast over the years.
I love your podcast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that so much. So
I really enjoy
top
your
fan,
podcast.
top guest. You're a Knowledgeable Provider royalty here. Okay, I'll shut up. Go ahead.
Well, I recently had a cochlear implant surgery and the implantation on my right side.
Did you make any of the plastics that are in your cochlear implant?
I did not.
Okay.
Beginning 15 years or so ago, I started having some mild hearing loss, mostly from a lot of ear infections as a child. When people like you look in my ear with an otoscope, always saying, did you have a lot of infections as a child? Oh, yes.
Sure.
I see the scarring. So my mild hearing loss was from that. And then in 2015, I believe it was, I had sudden sensory neural hearing loss in both ears within a few days of each other.
Wow.
I almost completely recovered from that. Almost. And I still bumped along with hearing aids for mild hearing loss, and it did fine. But then in the summer of 23, I had the sudden sensory neural hearing loss again in my right ear, and I did not recover. And then in December of 24, I had it again, and I couldn't hear anything out of that ear. So there was just no point in even wearing a hearing aid over there. I couldn't hear anything. Speech was what I had the most trouble with. And I get the impression from audiologists and my ENT and so forth that that's really commonly the first thing you lose because of the frequencies.
Sure.
My left ear, I can still hear, a fair amount. If I'm playing in a band, I can hear, pitch and articulation, and I can do music great with my left ear still. So late last year, my ENT said, you'd be a candidate for cochlear implant in this right ear. Maybe your left ear, but certainly your right ear. She said, there's nobody local that does it. They do it at Vanderbilt, and they do it in Birmingham. I play saxophone a little around locally.
Extremely accomplished saxophonist.
So I decided to go to Vanderbilt since I felt like they dealt with musicians being in Nashville.
That's a great thought. Yeah.
So I went there and they did an evaluation, and then the insurance, of course, had to buy off on it, had to approve it.
Do you have an idea about the cost of all this?
I was anxious to see. So I have Medicare. I've already said I'm an old guy. So I have Medicare. And by the way, people at Vanderbilt have said Medicare is very easy to deal with for this surgery. So I have Medicare, and I also have a private insurer. So between the two of them, my out-of-pocket so far has been zero. Now, I did notice that Vanderbilt billed Medicare $129,000 after the surgery. And there was a couple of audiologies in there as well. Now, the first thing I saw for Medicare, and I haven't looked more recently, said they paid that. I don't think that's right. I think they disallowed part of that, but paid a significant amount. I have heard that it's $40,000, but I don't know that for a fact. People on social media have said that without a private insurer, their Medicare covered all but $1,000 or all but $2,000. But again, that's hearsay. It's off the internet, so, it may not be worth anything.
Wait, stuff on the internet's not true? Whoa.
So speaking of that, the one thing that the audiologist told me after we were approved and scheduled at our last appointment before I would come back in a month and have the surgery, she said, don't read anything on social media.
Sure.
She said, it will just upset you.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, first thing I did when I got home was start reading social media.
Naturally.
I don't regret it because it made me think about a lot of things, but it did. She was exactly right. It did upset me.
What did you find that was upsetting, or what was her concern?
Well, okay. So among the side effects, some people have severe tinnitus.
Okay.
Some people have a lot of pain. Another very common thing, because they're cutting and working very close to nerves in the face, is the surgeon referred to it as the smile nerve. It's very common that nerve on the side of the mouth, either for a short time or for a long term, is affected. A lot of people lose their sense of taste.
Okay.
On the side that's been operated on. I didn't have any of those. I had zero. I had zilch. I did have, and I still do have, a little numbness on the side of my tongue that I was implanted.
Okay.
But it's really minor. It doesn't affect anything. And I was just realizing yesterday, gee, I hadn't thought about this in a long time.
Yeah.
So I had a detailed hearing test. The hearing test was a little over 2 hours.
Okay.
Now, as I said, I had a lot of ear infections as a child, so I've been having hearing tests for as long as I can remember. But I'd never had a 2-hour hearing test.
Yeah, that's intense.
They tested me on tones, which I've done the most of, gave me some words, had me to repeat those back, isolating one ear or the other. And then they threw some noise on top of it. The one that was most interesting to me at that point was the audio. This is with Vanderbilt audiologist, research audiologist. The audiologist said, I really don't like the hearing aids that you've got. And she said, I've programmed the machine to mimic what I think a better hearing aid would be for you.
Okay.
And then she again administered the hearing test with that optimized, but I flunked them all in my right ear. It was just miserable. A lot of times, even with both ears, I wouldn't make out the speech. This was the funniest thing that happened. It was a very attractive young woman. If I'm retired, I'm an old man. So very attractive young woman was an audiologist, had a very attractive student, and one of the words that I got was bitch. And I just could not bring myself. I said, I'm sorry, I can't hear that.
Too much of a gentleman.
And so when we were at the break between tests, before we started the next one, I said to the audiologist, I said, is there any blue language in this? And she looked right at me, didn't crack a smile, and she said, no. The word was witch. But I couldn't hear the difference. So. Anyway,
and you made the right choice then.
So I flunked the hearing test completely in the right ear. So then as talked to the scheduling people, and at that point in time, they were scheduling for the summer of 26. So I had a date, and then I got a call the next day. We've had a cancellation on May 15th of this year. Can you do it? She said, I really need to know now. And I said, I'll do it.
All right.
So the time frame that's usually very long between getting approved and having the surgery for me was very short, was about 2.5 months.
Got you.
So among the questions that I had for my surgeon, he got lots of questions. A lot of people will play with earplugs in loud situations, and I do in really loud situations. But putting earplugs in really affects how I sound to me.
Okay.
So a big question that I had, and I was shocked that I couldn't get an answer out of social media or the cochlear implant companies, was, so I'm going to put this buzzing thing, this saxophone mouthpiece, in my mouth, and is it going to be different after I have this done? And so one of the cochlear implant companies said, we've got a professional guitarist, and let you talk to him. I said, no, he doesn't put that thing in his mouth.
Right.
So there were piano players, guitar players, and I just said, no, it's not the same. I want to talk to a saxophone player or a clarinet player or a trumpet player or a trombone player or a horn player or a tuba player. I'm not picky. They just got to, do something with their mouth that buzzes.
I've never thought about that, but I'm sure there is some bone conduction involved that you wouldn't get from a stringed instrument or something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said, if I put earplugs in, and by the way, other players, I've talked to other players since then, and they've said the same thing. Oh yeah, I hate to play with earplugs in. So I brought it up to the surgeon, and I said, can you give me any feel? I said, I can't get any feel anywhere else. And he said, oh, I'm an old saxophone player. I can tell you for sure.
Okay.
And he said, you really won't have anything like putting earplugs in your ears. And he was exactly correct.
Excellent.
But when he said, I'm an old saxophone player, I said, that's why I'm at Vanderbilt.
There you go. Yep.
So things bop along. I go in for my surgery, and again, social media had one of the things that they had real horror stories about was blowing your nose and injuring your ear internally from the surgery.
Okay.
The prevailing wisdom on the internet was you can't blow your nose for 6 weeks.
Okay.
And again, I was, asking about playing instruments, and people come back and say, oh, you can't blow your nose for 6 weeks, so you can't play for 6 weeks. And I said, no. There's no comparison between blowing a saxophone, blowing a trumpet, blowing a wind instrument, and blowing my nose. I just don't buy that.
Sure.
Anyway, the day of surgery, I had a list of questions for the surgeon. And the first one was, how long till I can play? And I said, do I have to wait 6 weeks? Oh, no, you don't have to wait 6 weeks. He said, give it a couple of weeks. You'll be fine. So my next one was, how long before I can lift 15 pounds? Now, you're supposed to ask me, why 15 pounds?
Why 15 pounds?
And my answer is, the saxophone that I play the most is the baritone sax.
Okay.
And it weighs about 15 pounds. So how long till I can lift that one? And one of the other ones was how long before I can lift a gallon of milk.
Okay.
Why a gallon of milk? Well, a gallon of milk is about like an alto saxophone.
Okay.
So he said, couple of weeks. How soon can I drive? And he said, you can drive as soon as you're not taking narcotics. And he sent me out that day with narcotics, and just sort of prophylactically, I took one in the car on the way home, but I didn't take anything after that. It wasn't needed. I just didn't.
Fantastic. How long did the surgery itself take?
I didn't ask him how long mine takes. 2 or 2.5 hours is the prevailing wisdom on the internet.
Okay.
There are videos on YouTube that are useful. To describe it for the radio, I'll give it a try. On the back side of the ear, they'll cut the back side of the ear fairly deeply and then pull the ear toward the front to expose the surgery area. And then the part that gets implanted has a stainless steel compartment that's, I don't know, probably 3/4 of an inch square, something less than 1/4 of an inch thick. And out of that comes some electrodes. So the surgeon will grind away a bit of skull to set the stainless steel piece in. I've seen people where you can see that just under the scalp, just under the skin. I can't see mine. I mean, people have taken pictures and I can't see mine. I can feel it. The electrodes that come out the other end, he drills a hole, he or she. The resident that assisted, and I suspect actually did my surgery, was a woman, so I shouldn't limit it to one gender at all.
Sure.
Grinds into the skull till they get to the cochlea, and then drill a hole into the cochlea, and the electrodes then get fed into the cochlea. And they're long enough, they're a couple of inches, so they're long enough that they actually curve into the shape of the cochlea. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So they're actually sitting on the area where the cilia are.
Okay.
And then they close it up, sew your ear back on. So one of the day one standard things to do, the bandage looks like a salad bowl over the ear with a bunch of gauze wrapped around it, either around your head one direction or the other. But you're supposed to post a picture of your bandage day one. So it's on my Facebook page.
Okay. Perfect.
I did that. I was able to take that off on day 2. So I really only had it day 1. For the first week, I put an antibacterial cream on the incision. My surgeons used absorbable sutures, so I didn't have to have anything removed.
Okay.
So that's implantation. In the lingo, that day is implantation.
Okay.
Then 2 weeks later, well, it varies a little. Mine was 2 weeks, and that's real common. You go back and you get the external hardware that sends information into the stainless steel receiver that's just been implanted. So on activation day, the hardware, there's really 2 pieces of it. One of them looks like a really big hearing aid, and it hooks around the ear. And what it really is, well, it's 2 pieces. One piece is a microphone, and so it's what that ear should have heard.
Okay.
And then that gets sent into what's called the processor. So a whole thing gets called the processor. But the processor takes that analog signal, converts it to an electronic signal. And then the second piece sits on the head on top of that stainless steel piece magnetically. And I always figured it would just snap right on. Well, it doesn't. The magnetic attraction is fairly weak, because if it was really strong, your skin would get sore and you might have ulcers from it. So the piece that's attached by a wire to the processor is referred to as the antenna. It's round. So, of course, you can't miss the processor if you can see the person's ears, and you can't miss the antenna because it's sticking on the side of their head. So when they turn that on, that's activation. The prevailing wisdom on the internet, a lot of people said it sounds like the sound that you hear will sound like the chipmunks. Some other people said it's going to sound like R2-D2. So I knew that on day one, I would get sound, but I wouldn't be able to make any sense out of it. That was my expectation. In fact, it didn't remind me particularly of the chipmunks or R2-D2. It reminded me of the old Styx song, Mr. Roboto, and the robot voice in that piece. And in fact, it's still a whole lot like that. At first, I couldn't make any words out. I could tell when a word ended and another word started, but I couldn't make the words out. And so I stayed with just that for 2 weeks, and my assignment was to stream as much speech into the implant as I could. The implant is Bluetooth capable, and so I would stream it from my phone via Bluetooth into the implant. So I listened to podcasts. I had been saving some podcasts to listen to, and so I caught up on your podcast.
Thank you.
And a couple of my favorite radio shows, and then I had a stack of dozens of audiobooks. So I did that for 2 weeks. So after that 2 weeks, the audiologist assigned me an app, and the app speaks a word, and then on my phone it gives me 4 choices of what was actually just said, and I'm supposed to pick. And then it scores you on a scale of 1 to 100. So it really is easy to think of it in terms of A, B, C, D, and F. And initially, I had lots of Fs.
Okay.
It's gotten better. I'm up to an A on the single word almost all the time. The thing that's interesting to me, at first, all kinds of consonants that to me bore no resemblance. I mean, a P and a B are really the same thing, except that the B is voiced and the P is not. T and D, the same thing. And if you'd asked me beforehand, which ones are going to be difficult to differentiate, those are the ones I would have guessed. Nope. All kinds of consonants sound like all kinds of other consonants initially.
Okay.
Now, the app will let you repeat it as many times as you want before you pick. And sometimes I'd listen 4 or 5 times and I'd still get it wrong. As of yesterday, M and N is the only consonant pair that I have a lot of trouble with if it's at the end of the word. If you put it at the beginning of the word, I do okay. But M's and N's, they take me down from an A to a B.
Okay.
A lot.
Did you want to demonstrate the actual app?
If you want me to.
Yeah, 100%.
Normally, it will be beaming this into my implant.
Mm-hmm.
But so that we can pick it up here, I'm just going to let it play.
Okay, great.
The word Brit is the one to choose.
So the 4 words that I'm to choose between are Mac and Brick and Matt and Brit.
Ah, okay.
And so through my implant, at first, probably the Brick and the Brit would have been the hardest for me.
Okay.
And I can make it repeat.
The word Brit is the one to choose.
I thought it said brick, but it's Brit. So, and then I get a ding for getting it right.
The word dig is the one to choose.
Dig, and I'm to choose between did and dig and rad and rag.
Okay.
The word Tim is the one to choose.
So I've got the proper name: Tim, came, Kane, and and I would not have expected that I couldn't have told the difference between vowels when I was first implanted, but I couldn't. So the difference between the long A and the short I couldn't make it out at first.
What sound do you get if you get it wrong?
I think you don't get a sound at all.
Okay.
So you can't see it, but they light up green
Okay.
when you pick the right one. So
Lit is the one to choose.
So I'll pick suit.
The word lit is the one to choose.
So he repeats it
Okay.
and then lights the correct answer in
Word
green.
came is the one
So you
to
don't get a
choose.
ding at all.
Ah, gotcha.
You don't
Okay.
get any kind of a sound.
When you first started that out, could you make out the rest of what he's saying? The word is the one to choose? Or how long did it take you to get that part?
Oh, that's a good question. It took some weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew what he was saying because, like, the first time I turned it on, I forgot to take my hearing aid out.
Okay.
So I heard what he was saying through my good ear.
Okay.
Of course, I took it out after that. So even though I knew what was being said, it still took probably a couple of weeks.
Okay. I'm curious about the way that sounds. So I'm listening to it through your phone held up to a microphone through my headphones, but it sounds scratchy. It sounds like it's being played on a vinyl record or something. Is that just because it would sound different through the implant?
Well, through the implant, again, it's very robot-like.
Yeah.
The word came is the one to choose.
Oh, I hear it. Huh, I'd never noticed that. Well, I'm half deaf, so. And then after roughly 8 weeks of just working with that, and I'm supposed to work an hour a day, my current assignment is to stream speech just into the implant. Take the hearing aid off. So, I'm sorry, my left ear still has a hearing aid.
So just like a normal hearing aid, like somebody without an implant would have?
Yes. I'm interested that the local audiologists that had tried to fit me after I started really having trouble in 2023 didn't try this particular type of hearing aid. If they had, I might have waited a little while for the surgery on the right side because this hearing aid is very good, very good. But it wouldn't have stopped me from being implanted. It just might have made me postpone it a little while. And the new hearing aid was a part of activation. So on the day I was activated on my implant, I got the new hearing aid.
Okay.
So there are 3 companies that make cochlear implants that are FDA approved. There are others that you can get in Europe and other countries. I don't know how many total there are, but in the U.S., you have a choice of 3. 2 of those companies also have a division that makes hearing aids.
Okay.
And so it was my decision which of the 3 brands of cochlear implant I would be implanted with. And I studied. I really studied them, and I thought it was very interesting. All 3 of the companies gave real slick marketing literature to Vanderbilt to pass on to me, and they all have very slick websites. I don't mean slick negative in a negative term. I mean it's professional and informative and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So it's really spotty on whether people will develop the ability to perceive music through the cochlear implant.
Got you.
And music perception is important to me.
Yes.
And so I knew that I was going to be depending on my left ear and the hearing aid that I would be newly fit with after the implant surgery. So a main part of my selection process was I wanted one of the 2 companies that also has a hearing aid division.
Okay.
Both of those companies, the hearing aids and the cochlear implants communicate with each other. And so what my cochlear implant would be receiving and sending into that cochlea is also transmitted over to the hearing aid and is part of what the hearing aid sends into my hearing ear.
Okay.
So that was a big part of which company I chose. And then I sort of convinced myself that the company that had the most electrodes that went into the ear, I think there's 18, whereas in natural hearing, there are thousands and thousands of places that pitch and things get heard.
Sure.
So I'm not sure there's that much difference between 16 and 18. But I went with 18.
Yeah.
I haven't used this term, and I should have already used it by now, but this business of the weeks after implanting, when I'm practicing and learning, it's referred to as brain training.
Okay.
So part of brain training, as the farther I get in brain training, the more I realize that it really is very like just hearing in that ear. It's not stereo in that I hear exactly the same thing in both ears.
Okay.
But I very often realize that I'm actually perceiving enough of the speech in the implanted ear that I'm hearing speech a lot better than if I was just using the hearing aid.
Nice.
And I'm looking forward to it being an even bigger part of what I hear.
Sure. You said it's hit or miss whether music can be perceived through the implant. What's been your experience with that so far?
So I'm 3.5 months since activation. And in that time, about a half a dozen times, I've been streaming only into the implant. And for just little brief bits, I'm hearing real music, just a little bit. And I know I can't be tricking because, I'm hearing it in the other ear because I'm only streaming it
Right.
into the implant. So a few times I've really heard a little music. Most of the time, I can tell when a pitch changes. I can tell when there's articulation, even with percussion. I can't really tell what's being hit, but I can tell something's being hit.
Sure.
That may improve. I didn't have my heart set on it when I went into this, so that I won't be disappointed if I don't get it. I have an aunt who has great hearing, music hearing, with cochlear implants.
Mm-hmm.
So some people do, some people don't.
Got you.
I don't have it yet, but I may.
Sure.
The thing was, I couldn't hear people talking. I could do one-on-one with somebody, but you put me in a room full of people, and I couldn't hear. So my big thing was I wanted speech back.
Got you.
And I'll hear every once in a while speech from a real distance, and I'll say, it's coming back.
All right. I'm sure that's a great feeling.
It is.
Is there an expected time frame for how long brain training takes, or
Yes.
after this period of time, we don't expect it to get any better?
Optimizing speech is months, up to maybe a year or two. But the first few months are when the most happens. Music comes after that. So music is many months or years.
Okay.
And that's as specific as anybody will be.
What's the battery situation? Do you have to charge a component?
The main batteries are rechargeable. So this will last a whole day.
Okay.
If it's a really long day, if I have trouble getting to sleep and I end up sitting up till 1 or 2 in the morning, it'll go dead.
Okay.
Also on activation day, you get a backpack full of stuff. It's a small backpack, but it's full of pieces and parts and paper. So I got a dryer, and every night I'm supposed to put the processor and the antenna and the hearing aid, not the battery, in the dryer. Then I have a charger that takes 2 batteries. So at the end of the day, I put, one in it. And the next day I'm supposed to use the other one. I'm supposed to alternate them back and forth.
Got you.
So I was interested in the warranty. As I said, I've worn hearing aids for more than 10 years. And a lot of the companies will replace, anything under warranty for a year. Some places will replace anything under warranty for 2 years. I bought my hearing aids at Costco, and they'll even replace one lost one within the first 2 years.
Okay.
So I was accustomed to the warranties on hearing aids. The warranty on the processor and antenna is basically 5 years.
Okay.
And for that 5 years, the common way to get it repaired is you call the implant company and you say, my processor's not working. And they say, do you have a spare? And I say, yep, I got a spare. They say, use your spare and we're going to mail you a new spare. And then you send us the one that doesn't work anymore. And within the first month, I had to do that. My implant quit working. And so I've already tried out the repair process, and it worked very well.
Mm-hmm.
The significance of the 5 years is that all three of the companies tend to do their major updates on approximately 5-year cycles.
Okay.
And so after about 5 years, they've got a new model.
Is that just for the external components, I'm assuming?
Yes. A lot of people, as old as I am, I don't ever expect to have the internals replaced.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do. My aunt. So I should be more optimistic. She's 10 years older than I am, and was about my age when she had her first one installed. She had to have hers replaced. So sometimes, yes, but it's not like on a cycle that you can expect after X years you're going to have to do it.
So not like a pacemaker.
I don't have a pacemaker.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I'm not a provider. You're the provider.
Sorry.
You know about them.
Yeah. So with the pacemaker, you have a generator that sits under the skin, and it has an expected battery life.
Okay.
And so after 5-10 years, whatever, they take out the unit, and just plug a new unit into the existing wires. But so the cochlear implants are not that way.
Uh-uh.
Okay.
There's no battery under the skin from the day I was implanted. And it's just so faint. It's just so terribly faint that I really don't hear it very often. But there's a beep. It's really, really faint. And so I convinced myself that somehow the internals were getting charged. And so when I took the stuff off at night, they would discharge until morning when I put the other part in. And the audiologist shook her head like I was so far wrong. She said, there's no battery. There's nothing in it. And she said that it's a form of tinnitus.
Oh, okay.
But again, I've always, when I've heard tinnitus, I've always thought, it was a terrible thing and drove people crazy. This is just so faint that everything has to get quiet before I even hear it. So,
okay.
So one question that I had that I deliberately asked the surgeon on 2 different occasions, because I really wanted to compare the answer from 2 different askings, and I worded it a little bit different each time. So I've always been careful in loud situations, in just plain noisy situations. I got earplugs in all of my cars. I got earplugs in my backpack. I've always got earplugs if things get loud, because I always wanted to protect my hearing. So really, I wanted to know, do I need to protect the implanted side?
Oh, it's a great question.
And related to that, so I've had this sudden sensory neural hearing loss a total of 4 times. It's almost certainly from, in my case, a virus.
Okay.
Another common cause is Meniere's disease, but I don't have that. So I've had it 4 times. What if I get it again? What if I get a virus again in the inner ear on that side? Will I lose what I've gained from the implant? So those 2 questions they're really the same question. And I got the same answer both times. He says, "No, you don't have to worry about loud noise because you're not using the cilia anymore. You're using the electrodes." So a couple of times I've been playing in a rock band, and I pointed out to the other people fairly arrogantly that, notice, I don't have to put an earplug in this side because these amps can't hurt that side.
How does the implant handle the volume of what it's transmitting? I mean, is it, if something's louder versus softer, do you hear it louder versus softer? Or is it just,
Yes,
yeah, okay.
yes. And I've got 2 ways to control the volume. There's buttons on the processor.
Okay.
I've also got an app on my phone.
Okay.
I tend to use the app on the phone the most. And there are situations where I'll turn it down, but not very often. So at 3 months post-activation, I went back for another one of the 2-hour-long hearing tests.
Okay.
And the audiologist used my responses. Can you hear this? I'm going to make an adjustment. Is it better? It kind of reminded me of like going to an optometrist to get, new glasses.
Sure.
Which one is better?
Better one,
And,
better two.
Yeah. And so we did a lot of that sort. They refer to it as mapping. So I was remapped at 3 months, which was 2 weeks ago. And it's not quite the balance between the hearing aid and the implant is not perfect yet. I'm going back in another couple of weeks just to get that balance worked on a little bit.
Okay.
And so most of why I play with volume right now is because of the balance is not right.
Okay.
All right, I'll talk about my silliness. So you might have noticed there's a decoration, there's a sticker on my antenna on the round part that sticks to the side of my head.
Can I ask that question?
Sure.
I noticed you've decorated your external hardware there. You want to talk about that?
Lots of people, most people with cochlear implants hide them with their hair. They select a color that's the same as their hair color. I ain't got no hair. So even if I get it the same color as my hair, you're going to see the thing. And so I just decided to embrace that as a unique part about me.
All right.
And so I have started buying stickers that I stick on the antenna. I have one for the Chicago Cubs. I have one for my alma mater, the University of Southern Mississippi. And I have one that's a peace symbol. It shows my age. I keep thinking about Christmas decorations. I want to get, one that's very festive for Christmas. And I'd really like to find some little tiny lights that I could hang, because that's just sitting on the antenna.
Sure.
I'd like to decorate the processor and the wire to the antenna and the antenna with lights at Christmas time. I promised my minister of music that I would have that by our very formal Christmas presentation, so that there'd be this one goof off in the orchestra with lights flashing from the side of his head during the very formal parts of the presentation.
I can't wait to see that. I wonder if there would be a market for making, like custom decorations for those things, like people's cell phone cases or whatever.
There absolutely, positively is.
Okay.
It already exists. They're easy to find on Etsy.
Okay.
And I don't do a lot of commerce on those kinds of sites, so I can't tell you other ones. I mentioned my Chicago Cubs one. I actually bought that from one of those vendors, and it came with not just a sticker for the antenna, but a sticker for the battery and the processor. Now, I like to change them around. So they're kind of expensive. That one was kind of expensive to just use a few times.
Mm-hmm.
So I just use them on the antennas, and I actually have bought extra antenna covers. They're actually cheaper than the stickers.
Okay.
So, yeah, I have those stickers that I mentioned, but it's because they're on 4 different antenna covers.
Got you. That's really cool. That's very cool. Not something I would have thought of.
Well, it was really when I decided, in fact, I had already bought the first one. I was playing somewhere, and there was, about a 5, 6, 7-year-old boy in the audience, and he had an implant on both sides, and he had a Superman sticker
All right.
on both of his antennas and, on the processors too. So I don't think 5 or 6-year-olds should be allowed to decorate something that I can't decorate.
100%. 100%. Why should they have all the fun?
That's right. That's right.
Has anybody asked you about your implant? Like, hey, what is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
But mostly the people that have asked about it are people that know me. And they say, oh, there's your new jewelry or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, how's it going? And I've been interested. I figured I was in the minority, not realizing that there was this brain training period.
Mm-hmm.
So my friends almost always say, well, how's the brain training going?
Sure.
What are you hearing this week?
Yeah. It seems like a lot of what you learned beforehand was from social media, from the internet, from that kind of thing. If you had not done all that, do you feel like you would have been prepared pretty well by the medical team?
Yeah. So the way it works with Vanderbilt, and again, I don't want to sound like a commercial, but so use this as you want.
No, it's fine. Please send it, Hey, Vanderbilt, send us some money.
The way it works with Vanderbilt is you have the capability to message in to the audiologist, a nurse, and the surgeon. And so I asked several questions beforehand. The surgeon's resident responded when I would message the surgeon with a question.
Okay.
So I might have had more questions and I might have run them through them, but yeah, I do.
Okay, great. It sounds like you had a good experience up there.
I did. One of the really nice things at Vanderbilt is, so there's Vanderbilt Hospital and then there's clinics. Any of them, you can pull up in front and get free valet parking. Now, I don't trust them with my manual transmission cars, so I've never used that. But, I mean, even down to the stupid details of parking, I have really enjoyed going to Vanderbilt.
I'm sure the quote-unquote stupid details are the things that set the good institutions apart from, every surgeon knows what they're doing, more or less, but it's the other stuff, I would think, yeah.
Well, I'm just not convinced I would have found a saxophone playing ENT.
Yes.
Just anywhere I wanted to go.
I bet you're right. I bet you're right about that. But no, I'm glad you had a great experience. I've always felt like we're very fortunate in this area to live between UAB and you have world-class medicine, a couple hours in either direction. I love having that option to send my patients to.
Well, I had an annual visit with my local ENT about a month ago. So I was significantly, into this process. But she told me then that Crestwood has just, gotten approval to do cochlear implant surgery. So maybe people will be able to get it done locally.
Got you. That's cool. Can you have an MRI with these?
Can you? Yes. That's a good question. Up to a certain magnet size, I'll have no issues. Some people have done it and had a cover put on their head.
Okay.
But the x-rays for TSA at the airports, you're not supposed to let them get x-rayed through that, either the internal part or the external part.
Oh, okay.
So when I took a airplane trip this summer, I also traveled with my spare processor. So I would go up to TSA and I'd say, okay, I've got this implant. I can't do x-ray there. And this hardware here can't do x-ray. So they would do that with whatever that wand is that's not X-ray.
Okay. So it wasn't a problem.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Great. What advice would you have for anybody who is either considering a cochlear implant or who has one and maybe struggling after the surgery? What advice would you have to other people in your position?
Okay, so first, if you don't have an implant, I would say go into it without a whole lot of fear of the unknown. I think it would be an exaggeration to say it's routine now, but at one point it was experimental, and it's not experimental anymore. So go into it without fear of the unknown, and if you qualify and you want to try it, do it. I don't know what I could say to somebody that's having trouble. I'd start with a good audiologist if I was having trouble, and if the audiologist thought I ought to see a different surgeon or ENT, I'll bet they'd make a recommendation. The university faculty, they just have a different mandate than people that are not in a university research situation.
Right.
And so I would encourage people to use university research people.
Looking back on the process so far, any regrets, anything you would do differently?
No, I'll admit, a lot of times I wish I could be 3 years down the road and know if I made a right choice. Not that I don't think there's only one right choice, but if I made a right choice of the brand for music perception.
Sure.
But that's not a regret.
Right.
I'm nowhere near having the knowledge of whether I regret it.
Sure. Well, I'll put you on the schedule for 3 years from now, and we'll record another episode. We'll see where you are.
Right.
Which brand did you end up choosing?
I chose Advanced Bionics.
Okay.
They, shorten it down to AB. Phonak is their hearing aid brand.
Okay. Did you ever try any of the over-the-counter hearing aids before you got, like, audiologist ones?
No. But so when my family doctor first said, you really ought to think about hearing aids, he referred me to an audiologist, and the price just blew my mind.
Got you.
I'm a real cheapskate. But it just blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a test one, and I put it on, and I just didn't think it was worth that. I don't know what it finally was that sent me to Costco, and they don't have audiologists.
Mm-hmm.
They got some kind of a certified technician.
Right.
And they don't have all the brands, and even within a brand, they don't have all the models. But I put Costco ones on, and I think it was Consumer Reports that made me just go look. And the first ones that I put on, I said, this is really adequate, and it's a fraction of what the audiologist wanted. And so I actually went, over 10 years' time, I went through 3 different, they don't do it anymore. They used to make a Kirkland Signature brand.
Right.
And I bought the Kirkland Signature brand for 10 years, and I did very well. I did very well with them, but that's not over the counter. You still got to have a technician fit you.
Right.
Now, some Costco stores do have an audiologist. There's one up in Nashville that does.
Okay.
And at one point, I ended up actually driving to that store, and he did an adjustment for me. But they generally don't have audiologists.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I think that's the same for Sam's.
Okay.
They've got, certified hearing device fitter. It's a word like that.
Sure. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from my patients about that process at Costco. That's normally where I tell people to go if they're just considering hearing aids.
Well, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
But when those don't work, encourage them to go to a university.
I hate that was a process, but I'm glad you ended up in the right place. That's good. Well, this was wonderful. Thank you for sharing your experience. I've learned a ton. I know everybody else has also. Dale Hutchens, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your support. You're like the #1 fan, probably. Much appreciated. Thank you again to our wonderful guest, Dale Hutchens. I know I'm not supposed to say Dr. Dale Hutchens, but come on. What a remarkable guy. I really appreciate him sharing his experience with us. Listening back to the conversation, I'm struck by how much we probably all take our senses for granted, maybe especially the sense of hearing. And I think it's really cool that we have technology like this available to help potentially anyone losing their hearing, but especially someone like Dale who's so into music, really depends on their hearing for such a big part of their life. Instead of playing the usual outro music today, I'm going to leave you with a recording of Dale playing the saxophone at our church earlier this year. He played for us during the service, and this is before he got his implant. Now, I'm not like a professional musician or anything, but in my humble opinion, this sounds pretty damn good for somebody who can't hear. The song's called The Holy City. It was performed on March 16th, 2025 at Weatherly Heights Baptist Church in Huntsville, Alabama. This is Dale Hutchens on saxophone, accompanied by Gary Sims on piano. I'll put a link to this video in the show notes, along with some links that Dale was kind enough to provide of some different examples that are similar to what he's hearing through his cochlear implant at this point. Thank you to everyone for listening. Special thanks to our Patreon supporters. Hope you have a great week. And as always, stay safe, take care of yourself, and take care of your patients in that order. Now I'd like you to listen to this beautiful music and appreciate the fact that you can hear it.